The auction block reeked of fear and desperation. Maya pressed herself against the cold metal wall as alien buyers circled the platform, their credits flashing on holographic displays. She had survived 3 slave markets already. This would be her last. Lot 47. Human female. Age 22 standard years. No visible defects. The auctioneer's mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. Maya stepped forward on trembling legs. The crowd of buyers barely glanced at her. Humans were common now, cheap labor for menial tasks. She watched other captives sold for mining operations, factory work, pleasure houses. Each destination meant death, just with different timelines. A shadow fell across the platform. Maya looked up and froze. The alien standing before her was unlike any species she had encountered. Nearly 8 feet tall, with crystalline skin that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. His eyes were pools of liquid silver, ancient and calculating. 4 arms moved with predatory grace, each hand bearing claws that could tear through starship hulls. But it was the silence around him that terrified her most. Every other buyer had been chattering, negotiating, showing off. This creature commanded absolute stillness simply by existing. What can you do? His voice was like grinding stone, each word carefully chosen. Maya's throat felt like sandpaper. Every other buyer had asked about her strength, her endurance, her pain tolerance. None had asked what she could do. I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet, she whispered. Something shifted in those silver eyes. Not interest exactly, but recognition. Sold. He didn't even wait for the auctioneer to call for bids. Credits transferred instantly. Maya felt the slave collar around her neck change frequency, bonding her to this new master. The crowd dispersed, disappointed by the swift transaction. The alien gestured for her to follow. Maya walked 3 paces behind him through corridors that grew more opulent with each step. Crystalline walls gave way to polished metals, then to materials she couldn't identify. The air itself seemed to shimmer with wealth and power. They entered a transport vessel unlike anything in human space. No harsh angles or utilitarian design. Every surface flowed like water frozen in motion, beautiful and alien. My name is Kethmore. I am Regent Guardian to Queen Zelthara of the Vex Dominion. His words carried weight that made the air itself feel heavier. You will serve in the royal household. Maya's legs nearly gave out. She had been purchased by royalty. Not just any royalty, but Vex royalty. The Vex had conquered 16 star systems without losing a single battle. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's. Their warriors were living legends, and now she would serve their queen. The previous human servant was executed yesterday, Kethmore continued conversationally. She attempted to poison the queen's meal. Maya's mouth went dry. What happened to her? She was fed to the queen's pets. They are quite fond of human flesh. The transport shifted into hyperspace. Through the crystalline viewport, Maya watched stars stretch into lines of light. She was traveling further from human space than any of her kind had ever gone. Why did you choose me? She asked. Kethmore was silent for so long, Maya thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he spoke without turning around. You offered service, not defiance. You understood your position immediately. Most importantly, you promised to be quiet. His silver eyes found hers in the viewport's reflection. The queen values silence above all things. Maya nodded, afraid to speak. There are rules, Kethmore continued. Never speak unless spoken to. Never look directly at the queen unless commanded. Never touch anything without permission. Never leave your assigned quarters without escort. Break any rule, and you die. I understand. No, you do not. But you will learn quickly, or you will join your predecessor in the feeding pens. The transport began its descent toward a planet that dominated the viewport. Maya had never seen anything so beautiful or terrifying. Crystalline cities, stretched across continents connected by bridges of pure light. Massive ships moved through the atmosphere like schools of metallic fish. At the planet's heart sat a palace that defied physics. Spires twisted upward into the clouds, each one pulsing with energy that painted aurora across the sky. This was the seat of power for an empire that could crush humanity without effort. Welcome to Vex Prime, Kethmore said. Try not to die on your first day. The transport touched down in a docking bay larger than most human cities. Guard ships surrounded them immediately, their weapons trained on the vessel until identification codes were accepted. Maya followed Kethmore through security checkpoints that scanned her down to the molecular level. Each scanner beeped softly, confirming she carried no weapons, no diseases, no hidden surprises. Royal guards flanked them as they entered the palace proper. These weren't the ceremonial guards Maya had expected. Each warrior moved with deadly purpose, their crystalline armor reflecting the ambient light in hypnotic patterns. They watched her with eyes that had seen countless battles and emerged victorious from all of them. The corridors seemed to pulse with life. Maya realized the walls themselves were organic, grown rather than built. Veins of light pulsed through them like a massive heartbeat, carrying information and energy throughout the structure. The Queen sees everything that happens in this palace, Cathmore explained. The walls are extensions of her nervous system. Every word, every gesture, every thought strong enough to affect your body chemistry. She knows when servants lie, when they plan betrayal, when they simply think too loudly. Maya felt the weight of invisible observation pressing down on her. Somewhere in this vast structure, an alien queen was already aware of her presence. They stopped before massive doors that seemed to be carved from a single piece of starlight. Cathmore placed one clawed hand against the surface, and the doors began to open. "Remember the rules," he said softly. "Your life depends on them." Maya took a deep breath and stepped forward into the throne room of the most powerful being in known space, knowing that everything she had ever been was about to change forever. The throne room stretched beyond Maya's ability to fully comprehend its size. Crystalline pillars twisted upward into darkness, each one humming with energy that made her teeth ache. The floor beneath her feet was transparent, revealing depths that seemed to extend to the planet's core. And there, at the room's center, sat Queen Zelthara. Maya had seen images of Vex nobility before, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality. The queen was beautiful in a way that hurt to perceive directly. Her crystalline skin shifted through spectrums of color that had no names in any human language. 6 arms moved in perfect coordination, each gesture carrying meaning Maya couldn't understand. But it was her eyes that commanded attention, pools of liquid starlight that seemed to contain the wisdom and cruelty of entire civilizations. Cathmore dropped to one knee. Maya quickly followed, pressing her forehead to the cold floor. "Rise." The queen's voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. Maya stood but kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Around the throne she could see the shadows of other courtiers, beings from a dozen species, all united in their absolute subservience to the creature before them. So this is the new human. Queen Zelthara's attention felt like standing in a star's corona. "Look at me." Maya raised her head slowly. The queen's gaze was impossible to meet directly, but she forced herself to try. Those starlight eyes seemed to look through her, cataloging every secret and weakness. "Cathmore tells me you can cook, clean, and be quiet. We shall see." The queen gestured with one hand, and a section of the floor rose to form a small table. "Prepare my morning meal." Maya blinked in confusion. I don't know what you eat, Your Majesty." A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the court. The queen's expression didn't change, but Maya felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. "The kitchen will provide ingredients. You will determine what pleases me." The queen's head tilted slightly. "Your predecessor failed this same test." Maya was escorted by silent guards to a kitchen that could have served a small city. The walls here pulsed with the same organic light as the rest of the palace, but the equipment was familiar enough. Heating elements, preparation surfaces, storage units. She opened the first storage unit and gasped. Inside were ingredients from across the galaxy. Some she recognized, others were completely alien. Crystalline fruits that chimed when touched, meats that shifted color in response to temperature, spices that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her eyes could process. Maya closed her eyes and tried to think. What did she know about the Vex? They were energy-based life forms, their crystalline bodies capable of absorbing and storing various types of power. They valued efficiency, precision, beauty. She began to work, letting instinct guide her hands. She selected fruits that resonated with harmonic frequencies, preparing them in ways that enhanced their natural energy patterns. She chose proteins that would complement rather than compete with the queen's crystalline metabolism. As she cooked, Maya felt eyes watching her. Not just the guards, but something more intimate. The walls themselves seemed interested in her movements, recording every technique and decision. After an hour of careful preparation, she arranged the meal on a crystalline serving plate that had appeared on the counter. The colors were almost musical, deep purples that sang against bright golds, silver accents that made the entire composition glow. She carried the plate back to the throne room, acutely aware that her life hung in the balance of this moment. Queen Zelthara examined the meal without touching it. Her eyes traced every element, every color combination, every artistic choice Maya had made. "Interesting," the queen said finally. She picked up what looked like a crystal fork and took a small bite. The entire court held its breath. The queen chewed slowly, her expression unreadable. Maya watched those starlight eyes, searching for any hint of approval or condemnation. "It resonates," the queen said at last. "You understand that food is energy, and energy must harmonize." She took another bite, this one larger. "You may serve my household." Relief flooded through Maya so powerfully that her knees nearly buckled. She had passed the test. She would live another day. "However," the queen continued, "your real work begins now. Kethmore will show you to your quarters. You will prepare all my meals for the next week. If any disappoint me, you will share your predecessor's fate."
Maya bowed deeply.
"Yes, your majesty." As she was led from the throne room, Maya caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. In an alcove near the throne, she glimpsed what looked like a feeding pen. Inside, creatures that might once have been beautiful moved with predatory hunger, their eyes fixed on her with unmistakable appetite. The queen's pets, she realized, still waiting for their next meal. Kethmore led her through corridors that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as they walked. The palace was truly alive, constantly adapting to the needs of its inhabitants. "You did well," he said as they walked. "The queen has not said 'it resonates' about a meal in over a year. What happened to the other servants who tried? They thought in terms of taste rather than energy harmony. They tried to impose human or alien culinary traditions rather than understanding Vex physiology." Kethmore paused at an intersection where 3 corridors met. The queen is not merely royalty. She is the living embodiment of Vex civilization. Every meal, every gesture, every word must reflect that reality. They arrived at Maya's quarters, a small suite that was more luxurious than anything she had experienced as a free person. The walls here pulsed with softer light, and she could feel the presence of the palace's consciousness like a gentle pressure against her mind. "Rest," Kethmore said. "Tomorrow, your real education begins. You will learn palace protocol, Vex customs, the proper way to serve beings who could destroy star systems with a thought." After he left, Maya sat on the bed and tried to process everything that had happened. This morning she had been a slave in an auction house, expecting to die in some horrific industrial accident within months. Now she was a personal servant to the most powerful being in known space, but she wasn't fooling herself. The queen's approval had been conditional, temporary. One mistake, one dish that failed to resonate, and she would become food for those hungry creatures she had glimpsed. Maya lay back and stared at the ceiling, which showed a real-time view of the stars above the palace. Somewhere out there was Earth, if it even still existed. The war had been going badly when she was captured. For all she knew, humanity had already been conquered or destroyed. She was utterly alone, trillions of miles from anything familiar, serving a being whose very existence challenged everything she understood about life and consciousness. But she was alive. And in this place where death was always one mistake away, that was a victory worth celebrating. Tomorrow she would learn what it truly meant to serve the Queen of the Vex. Tonight she would allow herself to hope that she might survive long enough to find out what her life could become in this impossible place. As she drifted towards sleep, Maya felt the palace's awareness settle around her like a blanket. Even in rest, she was being watched, measured, judged. She dreamed of crystalline cities and meals that sang with harmonic energy, while somewhere in the depths of the palace, ancient eyes continued their endless vigil. Maya woke before dawn, though on this world dawn meant the rising of 3 different suns that painted the sky in impossible colors. The palace walls pulsed brighter as the royal household stirred to life. A soft chime drew her attention to a wall panel that had appeared overnight. Instructions scrolled across its surface in perfect universal standard, detailing the queen's breakfast preferences and the schedule for the day. Maya, dressed in the servant's uniform that had been provided, simple gray fabric that seemed to shift and breathe like living skin, she made her way to the kitchen, guided by subtle changes in the wall lighting that created a path only she could see. The kitchen was already active. Other servants moved with practiced efficiency, preparing meals for various members of the royal household. None acknowledged her presence directly, but she felt their curious glances as she gathered ingredients. Today's challenge was different. The queen had requested what the instructions called a harmony breakfast, a meal that would resonate with her energy patterns while she conducted morning court sessions. Maya had to prepare food that would sustain the queen through hours of political negotiations and ceremonial duties. She worked carefully, combining crystalline fruits with proteins that generated complementary energy frequencies. As she cooked, she became aware of a presence watching her more intently than usual. "You move differently than the others." Maya turned to find herself facing another servant. Humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin had a metallic sheen, and her eyes were solid black. "I'm the... Thekra," the being continued. "I serve Advisor Moltek. I've watched many humans work in this kitchen. Most move with fear or desperation.
You move with purpose." Maya considered her response carefully.
I'm trying to understand rather than simply survive." Thekra nodded approvingly. "Wise, the palace rewards understanding. Those who only seek survival become meals for the pets within weeks. How long have you served here?" 7 years. "I was captured when my world fell to the Dominion. Like you, I learned that excellence is the only path to longevity." Thekra moved closer, lowering her voice. "But be warned. The queen grows bored easily. Competence that becomes routine is as dangerous as incompetence." Before Maya could respond, Thekra had melted back into the crowd of workers. Maya finished preparing the breakfast, plating it with extra attention to visual harmony. As she carried the meal to the throne room, she passed through sections of the palace she hadn't seen before. Here the walls displayed what looked like living murals, scenes of conquest and ceremony that shifted and changed as she watched. She saw the fall of worlds, the submission of entire species, the terrible beauty of Vex's military might. The throne room was different this morning. Where yesterday it had been vast and empty, today it buzzed with activity. Representatives from a dozen species stood in carefully arranged groups, each delegation positioned according to complex protocols Maya couldn't begin to understand. Queen Zelthara sat upon her throne like a living constellation, her crystalline skin reflecting and refracting the morning light into patterns that seemed to hypnotize the assembled crowds. She was conducting multiple conversations simultaneously, her 6 arms moving in gestures that carried legal and ceremonial weight. Maya approached the throne following the precise path Kethmore had shown her, each step carefully measured to avoid crossing any of the invisible lines of protocol that governed movement in the royal presence. The queen didn't acknowledge her arrival immediately. Maya stood perfectly still, holding the breakfast tray, while negotiations continued around her. She watched the queen work and began to understand something fundamental about Vex governance. This wasn't rule by force or fear, though both were certainly present. This was rule by absolute competence. Every gesture, every decision, every word was perfectly calculated to achieve maximum effect. The queen wasn't just powerful, she was flawlessly efficient. Finally, the queen gestured for Maya to approach. The conversations around the throne quieted as attention focused on the human servant and her offering. Maya set the breakfast on the arm of the throne and stepped back, eyes lowered. Queen Zelthara examined the meal with the same intensity she had given to matters of state. She lifted a piece of crystalline fruit to her mouth and bit down. Maya heard the harmonic chime as the fruit's energy pattern synchronized with the queen's own. "Acceptable," the queen pronounced, and conversations resumed. Maya turned to leave, but the queen's voice stopped her. "Remain. Observe." For the next 3 hours, Maya stood motionless as the queen conducted the business of empire. She watched trade agreements negotiated with mathematical precision. She saw justice dispensed with decisions that took into account factors spanning multiple star systems. She observed the careful choreography of absolute power. What struck her most was the silence between words. The queen never rushed, never showed uncertainty, never wasted motion. Every pause was calculated, every gesture meaningful. In that silence, Maya began to understand why her promise to be quiet had been so important. When the morning session ended and the throne room emptied, the queen finally turned her attention to Maya. "What did you observe?" Maya hesitated, uncertain if she was meant to answer. The queen's starlight eyes waited with infinite patience. "You use silence as a tool," Maya said finally. "Not empty space, but structured quiet that makes people think about what they really want to say. Elaborate. When the Kethman ambassador tried to renegotiate the tribute levels, you didn't argue or refuse. You simply waited." The silence made him reconsider his position and withdraw the request himself. Something that might have been approval flickered in the queen's expression. "And what else?" "You conducted 7 different negotiations simultaneously, but you never gave any delegation the impression they were receiving partial attention. Each conversation felt complete and focused when you engaged with it. Efficient use of attention and time. Yes." The queen rose from her throne, her movement fluid and precise. "You may have potential beyond kitchen duties." Maya felt her heart race. Potential for what? Advancement or execution? With beings this powerful, the two possibilities often overlapped. However, potential must be tested. Tonight you will attend the evening court session. You will serve refreshments to visiting dignitaries. One mistake in protocol, one misplaced gesture, one moment of inappropriate attention, and you will be fed to my pets. The Queen swept from the throne room, leaving Maya alone with the weight of impossible expectations. Kethmore appeared at her side as if summoned by her panic. "She's testing you," he said without preamble. "The evening session includes representatives from hostile powers. One wrong move could trigger diplomatic incidents that cost lives across multiple systems. Then why is she risking it? The Queen doesn't waste time on servants who show only basic competence. She invests effort only in those who might become something more." Maya felt the weight of opportunity and terror in equal measure. "What am I supposed to become?" "That," Kethmore said, "depends entirely on how well you understand what it means to serve power that could reshape reality itself." He led her away to begin the most important education of her life, learning to move among beings who held the fate of civilizations in their hands, while carrying refreshments and trying not to start any wars. As they walked through corridors that pulsed with the heartbeat of empire, Maya realized she stood at a crossroads that would determine not just her survival, but the shape of her entire existence. Behind them, the empty throne room waited for evening and the arrival of powers that could destroy star systems with poorly chosen words. The afternoon passed in intensive training that felt more like military preparation than servant instruction. Kethmore guided Maya through the labyrinthine protocols that governed interaction with visiting dignitaries from hostile powers. "The Zithraki delegation arrives at sunset," he explained as they walked through a practice chamber where holographic figures represented various alien species. "They are shapeshifters and consider any direct eye contact an act of aggression. However, complete avoidance of visual acknowledgement is interpreted as contempt." Maya watched him demonstrate the precise angle of peripheral vision required, enough to show awareness without triggering hostility. She practiced the movement until it became muscle memory. "The Vorthek ambassador feeds on emotional energy," Kethmore continued. "Any strong feeling, fear, excitement, nervousness, will be immediately detected. You must maintain perfect emotional equilibrium, or he will interpret your presence as either a threat or an opportunity for feeding." The holographic Vorthek materialized before them, a shifting mass of dark energy with eyes like burning coals. Maya practiced moving through its proximity while keeping her mind carefully blank. Most challenging will be the Kethvaldry representative. Kethmore's expression grew grimmer. "They communicate through biochemical emissions. Your human scent will tell them things about your health, your emotional state, your recent activities. They will know you are new to the palace. They will know you are afraid. They will attempt to use this information to gain advantage in their negotiations with the Queen." Maya felt her confidence cracking. "How am I supposed to hide biological reactions from beings who can smell my thoughts?" "You don't hide them, you control them." Kethmore touched a control panel, and the practice chamber's atmosphere shifted. "The palace can modify local air composition. You will carry a personal atmospheric modifier that will mask the more obvious human biochemical signatures, but emotional control must come from within." For 2 hours, Maya practiced meditation techniques while holographic aliens tested her reactions with increasingly provocative scenarios. By the end, she could maintain calm even when the simulated Zithraki performed threat displays inches from her face. As the third sun began to set, painting the palace walls in deep purples and golds, Maya was fitted with her evening uniform. The fabric was more sophisticated than her morning clothes, shot through with fibers that could modify their color and pattern in response to the wearer's movements. "Remember," Kethmore said as they approached the evening court chamber, "you are not merely serving refreshments. You are representing the Queen's household to powers that could become allies or enemies based on tonight's interactions. Every gesture you make reflects on Vex competence and hospitality." The evening court chamber was smaller than the morning throne room, but far more intense. Crystalline walls had been configured to create intimate conversation areas while maintaining sightlines that allowed the Queen to observe all interactions simultaneously. Queen Zalthara entered as the final delegation arrived. Her appearance had been modified for the evening. Her crystalline skin now displayed patterns that seemed to shift through multiple dimensions, creating an effect that was beautiful and subtly disorienting. Maya realized this was psychological warfare disguised as fashion. The Queen took her place not on the massive throne, but in a more intimate setting that suggested casual conversation while maintaining her position of absolute authority. Maya began her circuit of the chamber, carrying a tray of refreshments designed for each species present. The Zithraki delegation received crystalline constructs that resonated with their shape-shifting biology. The Vorthek ambassador was offered energy matrices that would satisfy his feeding requirements without providing access to unauthorized emotional signatures. Everything went smoothly until she approached the Kethvaldry representative. The alien was humanoid but wrong in ways that made Maya's skin crawl. Its movements were too fluid, its proportions subtly off, its eyes too knowing. As she offered the specially prepared biochemical supplements it required, the creature leaned close enough that she could smell its sweet, cloying breath. "Interesting," it said in perfect universal standard. "A new human. Young, healthy, recently traumatized but recovering well." And it paused, nostrils flaring. "Intelligent. Much more intelligent than your kind usually are." Maya maintained her neutral expression and said nothing, but she felt the creature's words ripple through the chamber. Other conversations had paused as delegates noted the exchange. "Tell me, little human," the Kethvaldry continued, "what do you think of serving beings who conquered your species?" The question was a trap. Any answer would reveal information about human attitudes, resistance movements, or submission levels. The Kethvaldry was gathering intelligence disguised as casual conversation. Maya met the creature's eyes with carefully controlled calm. "I think service is an opportunity to learn, Ambassador. And I have learned much about efficiency tonight. It was a perfect non-answer that acknowledged the question without providing useful information. More importantly, it demonstrated that human intelligence could operate at diplomatic levels, a fact that would influence how these powers calculated their future strategies regarding humanity." The Kethvaldry's expression shifted to something approaching respect. "Indeed, most educational." Maya completed her circuit without further incident, but she felt the weight of observation from every being in the chamber. Her interaction with the Kethvaldry had marked her as something more than a simple servant. When the evening session ended and the delegations had departed, Queen Zelthara summoned Maya to approach the throne. "The Kethvaldry attempted to extract intelligence from you. Your response demonstrated that humans can function at diplomatic levels when properly trained." The Queen's starlight eyes studied Maya with new interest. "This information will affect how these powers approach future negotiations with human colonies." Maya felt the enormity of what had just happened. Her simple response to a casual question had potentially changed the fate of human worlds across the galaxy. "You handled yourself adequately," the Queen continued. "However, adequacy is not sufficient for the position I am considering offering you." "Position, Your Majesty?" "The previous human servant was executed not for poisoning my food, but for failing to understand that she had become a representative of human capabilities to the entire galaxy. Every action she took reflected on her species' potential value as subjects rather than slaves." The Queen rose, her movement creating patterns of light that seemed to rewrite the air itself. "I am prepared to offer you training as a cultural liaison. You would serve as an interface between the Vex Dominion and human populations. Your success or failure would directly impact whether humanity is granted tributary status or faces complete subjugation." Maya felt the weight of entire worlds settling on her shoulders. What would this training involve? Everything. History, politics, economics, military strategy, cultural analysis. You would learn to think like royalty while maintaining your human perspective. You would become a bridge between species. And if I fail, then humanity burns, and you watch from the feeding pens before joining the feast. The Queen's words carried absolute finality. This wasn't just an offer of advancement. It was a test that would determine the fate of her entire species. "I accept," Maya said without hesitation. Queen Zelthara smiled, and Maya realized she had never seen the expression before. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. "Your education begins tomorrow. Kethmore will be your primary instructor, but you will also learn from specialists across the Dominion. If you succeed, you will hold a position of power unprecedented for your species." As Maya was escorted back to her quarters, she understood that everything had changed again. She was no longer just a servant fighting for survival. She had become humanity's representative to an empire that spanned the galaxy. The walls around her pulsed with new patterns, and Maya realized the palace itself was adjusting to accommodate her changing status. She was being watched not just as a curiosity now, but as a potential architect of humanity's future. In her rooms, she sat by the window and looked out at the alien stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness were human worlds waiting to learn their fate. Their future now depended on whether a former slave could master the art of serving power while wielding it. Tomorrow would bring challenges she couldn't imagine. Tonight, She allowed herself to feel the weight of impossible responsibility and the first stirrings of hope that she might be strong enough to bear it. The stars wheeled overhead as Maya began the transformation from servant to diplomat, from victim to the potential savior of her species. 6 months passed in a blur of intensive education that rewarded Maya's brain while pushing her body to its limits. Her days began before dawn, with physical conditioning designed to help her function in various alien environments. By mid-morning, she was studying galactic history with scholars who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. Afternoons brought practical training in diplomacy, economics, and cultural analysis. She learned to read the subtle body language of 17 different species, to negotiate trade agreements that spanned multiple star systems, to identify the economic and political pressures that drove interstellar conflict. Evenings were reserved for what Kethmore called royal thinking, the ability to process multiple layers of consequence and opportunity simultaneously. Maya learned to see beyond immediate problems to their long-term implications, to understand how decisions made today would ripple across decades of galactic politics. But it was the nights that changed her most fundamentally. In the hours when the palace settled into its quiet rhythms, Queen Zelthara herself took over Maya's education. These sessions took place in the Queen's private study, a chamber that existed at the palace's heart where the organic walls pulsed with direct access to the Dominion's information networks. Here, surrounded by the living consciousness of an empire, Maya learned what it truly meant to wield power on a galactic scale. "Show me the human colony reports," the Queen commanded during one such session. Maya had become accustomed to the Queen's teaching method. Direct exposure to real problems requiring immediate solutions. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing the status of human settlements across the Dominion. The information was sobering. Some colonies had adapted well to Vex rule, their populations thriving under the protection and technological advancement the Dominion provided. Others struggled with cultural integration or resource allocation. A few showed signs of organized resistance that would require military intervention if left unchecked. "What do you see?" the Queen asked. Maya studied the data, her mind processing patterns that would have been invisible to her 6 months ago. The successful colonies share certain characteristics. They maintained their cultural identity while adopting Vex technological and administrative standards. The struggling ones either rejected integration entirely or surrendered their human identity too completely. Elaborate on the resistance movements. Maya highlighted several colonies where unrest was growing. They're not rebelling against Vex rule directly. They're rejecting the integration process because they don't understand the benefits. They see only the loss of autonomy, not the gain in security and technological advancement. And your recommendation? This was the test. Maya knew that her answer would determine actual policy decisions affecting millions of human lives. "Cultural liaison missions," she said after careful consideration. "Send representatives who can explain the integration process in terms humans can understand. Show them successful colony models. Give them agency in choosing how to adapt rather than imposing solutions." The Queen nodded slowly. "Implement this recommendation. You will select and train the liaison teams." Maya felt the weight of real authority for the first time. The Queen wasn't asking for her opinion. She was giving her responsibility for shaping how humanity integrated into the Dominion. Over the following weeks, Maya worked with a team of specialists to develop what became known as the Human Integration Protocol. She personally visited struggling colonies, observing their challenges and adapting solutions to their specific circumstances. What she discovered changed her understanding of both species. Humans weren't simply resistant to change. They were terrified of losing their identity in the face of obviously superior alien culture. The Vex, meanwhile, weren't trying to eliminate human distinctiveness. They genuinely wanted to preserve the qualities that made each species valuable while creating a stable, efficient empire. The breakthrough came when Maya realized that successful integration required translation, not transformation. She began developing frameworks that allowed humans to maintain their cultural practices while adopting Vex standards for technology, administration, and interstellar cooperation. The results were dramatic. Colonies that had been on the verge of rebellion became productive, stable members of the Dominion. Human populations that had been sullen and resentful became genuinely enthusiastic about their place in the galactic community. But success brought new challenges. The other species are taking notice, Kethmore informed her during one of their regular briefings. "Your integration protocols are being studied by tributary populations across the Dominion. Some are requesting human liaisons to help with their own adaptation challenges." Maya felt a mixture of pride and terror. That's good. It's unprecedented. No species has ever become cultural mentors to others within the Dominion. You're creating a new category of imperial citizenship. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just surviving under Vex rule, they were becoming essential to the Empire's continued expansion and stability. This development caught the attention of powers beyond the Dominion. The Keth Valdry have requested a formal audience, Queen Zeltara announced during one of their evening sessions. They wish to discuss cultural integration strategies for their own territories. They specifically requested that you attend as a negotiation specialist. Maya felt her throat tighten. They want to recruit me. Yes. The question is whether the Dominion is willing to loan you to potentially hostile powers, or whether your value to us exceeds the diplomatic benefits of cooperation. This was the moment Maya had been unconsciously preparing for, the point where her success made her a strategic resource that multiple galactic powers wanted to control. What do you recommend, Your Majesty? I recommend you consider what you want your life to become, the Queen replied. You could remain in the Dominion, continuing to develop integration protocols, and eventually taking a formal position in the Imperial administration. You would be safe, honored, and influential. Or you could accept assignments throughout the galaxy, helping various powers manage cultural integration challenges. You would become the first truly neutral diplomat in galactic history, affiliated with no single empire but trusted by all. The choice would determine not just Maya's future, but humanity's role in galactic civilization. As a Dominion specialist, humans would remain valued subjects. As an independent cultural expert, they could become partners to multiple powers. How long do I have to decide? The Keth Valdry delegation arrives in 3 days. Your answer will determine not only your personal fate, but whether humanity emerges as a galactic power in its own right or remains forever subject to stronger species. Maya spent the next 2 days in intensive consultation with human colony representatives, Vex administrators, and her own conscience. The decision would ripple across generations. On the morning of the 3rd day, she stood before Queen Zelthara with her choice made. I choose independence, she said, but with conditions. The Queen's starlight eyes showed genuine curiosity. Name them. I want guaranteed protection for human colonies within the Dominion. I want the right to return here whenever necessary. And I want a formal treaty establishing humanity as cultural integration specialists for the galactic community. You're asking me to grant your species diplomatic immunity and specialist status? I'm asking you to transform humanity from subjects into partners. Queen Zelthara was silent for so long that Maya wondered if she had overreached fatally. Finally, the Queen spoke. Granted. All conditions accepted. Maya felt the foundations of her world shift again. With those words, humanity had just achieved something unprecedented, formal recognition as an independent power, specializing in cultural diplomacy. The Keth Valdry delegation will be informed that they are negotiating with the representative of an allied power, not a Dominion subject, the Queen continued. Your first assignment as an independent diplomat begins when they arrive this afternoon. As Maya prepared for the most important negotiation of her life, she reflected on the journey from auction block to galactic diplomat. She had promised to cook, clean, and be quiet. Instead, she had learned to serve power while wielding it, to preserve her humanity while transcending its limitations. The stars that had once seemed impossibly distant now felt like destinations waiting to be explored. That afternoon, as alien delegations gathered to meet humanity's first galactic diplomat, Maya stood ready to reshape the balance of power in the Galaxy 1. Conversation at a time, the Keth Valdry delegation arrived precisely at sunset, their ship settling onto the palace landing platform with the fluid grace characteristic of their technology. Maya watched from a crystalline observation deck as beings emerged who would determine humanity's place among the stars. Unlike their previous representative, this was a full diplomatic mission. 7 Keth Valdry officials moved in perfect coordination, their biochemical emissions creating a complex conversation that Maya's enhanced sensors could partially decode. They were discussing her before they had even entered the palace. Queen Zelthara had insisted that Maya conduct these negotiations in the formal diplomatic chamber, a space reserved for discussions between sovereign powers. The message was unmistakable. Humanity was being recognized as an independent entity capable of making binding agreements. Maya entered the chamber wearing robes that marked her as a neutral diplomat rather than a Dominion representative. The fabric had been specially designed to interact with her nervous system, providing real-time feedback about her emotional state while projecting an aura of calm authority. The Keth Valdry delegation was already seated around a crystalline table that could display 3-dimensional projections of relevant data. Their leader, identified by complex biochemical markers that Maya had learned to read, rose as she entered. Representative Maya Chen of humanity, he said. his voice carrying harmonics that suggested both respect and calculated interest. "I am Vorthak, speaker for the Kethvaldry Consortium. We are intrigued by your species integration achievements." Maya took her place at the table, noting how the other delegates positioned themselves to optimize their biochemical communication network. She was facing a collective intelligence that could process information and reach decisions faster than any individual mind. "Speaker Vorthak," she replied, allowing her voice to carry the formal cadence she had learned for interspecies diplomacy. "I am honored to discuss cultural integration strategies with the consortium." "Your protocols have achieved remarkable results within the Vex Dominion," Vorthak continued. "Species that were previously resistant to imperial integration have become productive citizens. Populations that faced cultural extinction have maintained their identity while adopting galactic standards." Maya nodded carefully. "Integration works best when it preserves what makes each culture valuable while creating frameworks for cooperation." "Indeed. The consortium has observed similar challenges within our own territories. We have 17 tributary species struggling with various aspects of cultural adaptation. Traditional methods have proven insufficient. The real negotiation was beginning." Maya activated her mental protocols, simultaneously tracking the conversation's surface meaning, the underlying political implications, and the biochemical subtext the Kethvaldry were transmitting among themselves. "What specific challenges are you facing?" she asked. Vorthak gestured, and the table displayed a three-dimensional map of Kethvaldry space. Highlighted systems showed the locations of troubled tributary populations. "The Mortheki refuse to adopt our administrative systems, claiming they violate religious prohibitions. The Zekrani have embraced our technology so completely that they're losing their cultural distinctiveness. The Veltari maintain their traditions but reject any cooperation with other species." Maya studied the data, her trained mind identifying patterns that would have been invisible months ago. Each species was responding to integration pressure in predictable ways: rejection, over-assimilation, or isolation. She had seen similar responses in human colonies. "These aren't integration failures," she said finally. "They're communication failures. Each species is trying to protect what they value most, but they don't understand how integration can preserve those values while expanding their opportunities." The biochemical exchange among the Kethvaldry intensified. Maya's sensors detected what seemed to be excitement mixed with skepticism. "Elaborate," Vorthak requested. "The Morteki need to understand that administrative systems can be adapted to accommodate religious requirements. The Zekrani need cultural preservation programs that maintain their identity while they explore new technologies. The Veltari need controlled interaction protocols that allow cooperation without forced cultural mixing." Maya activated the table's display system and began projecting solutions based on successful human colony integration models. For each problematic species, she outlined specific adaptation strategies that address their concerns while achieving consortium objectives. These protocols assume that successful integration preserves rather than replaces existing cultures, she concluded. "The goal is expansion of capability, not transformation of identity." The Kethvaldry fell silent, their biochemical emissions shifting to patterns Maya's sensors couldn't fully decode. She waited, maintaining the patient calm she had learned from Queen Zelthara. Finally, Vorthak spoke. "Your analysis is compelling. We would like to retain your services to implement these protocols within consortium territory." This was the moment that would define humanity's future role in galactic civilization. Maya chose her words carefully. "I'm willing to provide consultation and training, but with specific conditions." "Name them." "First, any integration protocols must be developed cooperatively with the affected species. No imposed solutions. Second, I require guaranteed access to the populations involved, including the right to halt implementation if I determine it's causing harm. Third, successful protocols become available to all galactic powers, not exclusively to the consortium. The biochemical exchange among the Kethvaldry became intense enough that Maya's sensors registered it as barely controlled chaos. She was essentially demanding oversight authority over consortium internal affairs while requiring them to share any successful strategies with their competitors. "You ask for unprecedented authority for a representative of a minor species," Vorthak said finally. "I'm asking for the authority necessary to ensure successful outcomes," Maya replied. "Integration failures damage everyone involved. Effective protocols benefit the entire galactic community." "And your compensation requirements?" Maya had prepared for this moment. formal recognition of humanity as neutral cultural integration specialists, guaranteed protection for human colonies regardless of their current political affiliation, and establishment of a permanent cultural liaison office with diplomatic immunity. She was requesting not just personal authority, but effective sovereignty for her entire species. The Kethvaldry conference continued for nearly an hour, their biochemical discussions creating patterns so complex that Maya's sensors registered them as approaching the threshold of collective consciousness. When they finally reached consensus, Vorthak's announcement changed the balance of galactic power. Accepts your conditions. We will sponsor a formal treaty recognizing humanity as neutral arbitrators for cultural integration disputes throughout the galaxy. Maya felt the weight of history settling around her. With those words, humanity had transformed from a conquered species to a galactic diplomatic power. There is one additional consideration, Vorthak continued. Other powers have been monitoring these negotiations. The Zithraki Empire has requested similar consultation services. The Vorthak Collective has indicated interest in cultural preservation protocols. You may find yourself negotiating treaties that reshape galactic politics. That evening, as Maya prepared her report for Queen Zelthara, she reflected on the impossible journey from slave to diplomat. She had learned to serve power while transforming it, to preserve her humanity while transcending its limitations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as other galactic powers sought to engage humanity's unique diplomatic capabilities. But tonight, she allowed herself to appreciate what had been achieved. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through military conquest or technological superiority, but through the ancient arts of understanding, patience, and the ability to build bridges between different ways of being. The stars that had once seemed impossibly distant now felt like a neighborhood waiting to be explored, one careful conversation at a time. In her final report to Queen Zelthara, Maya wrote, "Mission accomplished. Humanity is no longer seeking a place in galactic civilization. We are helping to build it." The Queen's response was a single word that carried the weight of empires. Excellent. Maya closed the communication channel and looked out at the stars, wondering which world would next benefit from humanity's hardest-earned skill, the ability to find common ground among beings who seemed to share nothing except the vast darkness between their worlds. Her journey from auction block to architect of galactic diplomacy was complete. Tomorrow, the real work of building a better galaxy would begin. The crystalline palace pulsed with quiet satisfaction around her, its living walls recording the moment when a species learned to transform suffering into wisdom, and wisdom into hope for everyone. In the depths of space, other civilizations watched and wondered what these strange humans might teach them about the art of becoming more than they had ever imagined possible.